Well, hey there, everybody. This here is another episode of Bucket List Coach Web Show Live. Today we're celebrating Cindy's Navy Ohana. Wow. This is some incredible stuff going on here today. Guys, I am so grateful that you can come back and join us for another episode of Bucket List Coach Web Show Live. My name is Robin Stern. I am your Google guru, and I'm also the executive director of Be Better, Not Bitter, a 501c3 outside of Atlanta, Georgia. Today is Giving Tuesday, folks, and this is the National Month of Giving. So if you got some money that you don't want the IRS to have, I would highly recommend that you go give it to some charity that would really appreciate it and put it to great use. So today I'm filling in for Cindy, actually this whole month because of some health issues, but I have it on good authority that she may pop in here today because we are talking to her favorite people in the whole world. This is the group of guys from the microprocessors to the pilots that have everything to do with Top Gun and the F14 Tomcat. And this is Cindy's tribe. She just can't help herself when she gets around these guys. So this month is Aviation History Month. So of course, having the whole Top Gun F14 thing is amazing. And it's also Gratitude Month. And on the 29th, today, National Day of Giving, like I was talking about. So make sure you subscribe to Bucket List Coach Web Show Live on YouTube for a free ebook on how to create your bucket list. Today is amazing, but I want to tell you real quick about the cruise that's coming up in April. Cindy's put together a National Day cruise. Now, we know there's a National Day calendar. She's a freak for the National Day calendar, and I have it under some more authority from a little bird. There may be a Cindy Lee Bucket List Coach Web Show Day on the National Day calendar. How about that? Her very own day on the National Day calendar. So keep your eyes open for that. But about the cruise, Puerto Vallarta, Mazatlan, Cabo, Long Beach, taking off, coming back, celebrating various National Day events for the month and for some days. Volunteer month at the orphanage at Casa Hogar in Puerto Vallarta, and also Guitar Month, Cabo Wabo, Humor Month at the Comedy Club, and Brunch Month, Sea Day brunch with green eggs and ham at the Green Eggs and Ham restaurant. That should be pretty cool. Also, Prime Rib Day, National Prime Rib Day on the Carnival Panorama. You can get more information on this at MexicoBucketListCruise.com. Don't put the coach. It's MexicoBucketListCruise.com. Stay tuned for Cindy's Day. All right, so today, I think Cindy's going to pop in here in a minute. She's going to lose her mind if I don't let her. Today, we're celebrating the Navy with Rob, Ray, LEEKSTER, and Lorenzo. So first, I got to talk a little bit about Cindy because this is why she's such a weirdo about this, okay? Born and raised in Northern California, now she's in Southern California, travel agent, podcast host, and gratitude gift specialist. Her love for aviation began when she was a teenager living near Travis Air Force Base, where the C-5 would fly over, right? That thing is enormous, and I worked on helicopters, and they landed one on our helicopter base one time, and I think it was going negative miles per hour as it hit the tarmac. It's incredible how they fly those things. But in her early 20s, she got to work for the Navy as a ship fitter on a naval submarine. And of course, that was the year Top Gun came out. Oh, there it was. There began the love for the F-14 Tomcat. So if you want to book an aviation vacation or visit a museum, go to bucketlistcoachtravel.com. And if you want to hang out with me in May, they're going to be showing Top Gun on the deck of the Midway in San Diego. And I'm trying to figure out how to make that happen. I think I know a good travel agent that might be able to help me. So today, we're going to start out talking to Ray Holt. Sorry to make you sit through all that, Ray. I know that was a lot, but Cindy has to have the intros. So how you doing today, sir? I mean, I really appreciate you showing up and hanging out with us. How you doing? How's your day going?
It's a great day. It's raining here, and such an honor to be with Tomcat people.
Awesome. Tell us all about the accidental engineer. How do you fit into this, man?
I'm kind of a behind the scenes person, and since the Navy wouldn't let me talk about this for 30 years, I was really behind the scene. Uh, so I was a iffy high school student. I was told not to go into engineering. So I love baseball. My goal was to play baseball. Uh, I transferred to the University of Idaho. I couldn't play baseball because of the transfer. I decided to study forestry because you were forced to pick a major. I joined the Army ROTC, was in the Ranger program, just kind of loving it. And then all of a sudden, I was told I should be taking a physics and electricity class. First class ever, I aced it.
Uh-oh.
And I said, look, I'm the only non-engineer in this class. I think I should consider engineering. I transferred back down to California, Cal Poly in Pomona, studied electronic engineering, transferred ROTC program to the USC, the Air Force ROTC, and ended up being their top cadet my senior year. Then I decided I didn't want to stay in. And that didn't sit very well, but I had the option to get out. I told the captain, I think I need to be designing computers because I had taken one computer class at Cal Poly. So he threatened me and everything, but they let me out. And when I interviewed, the company I chose to go with was Garrett Air Research, who did aerospace everything.
Okay.
You know, behind the scenes, audio, cabin pressure. So they hired me to design amplifiers. And on my first day, I got the word that I was the only engineer in the group that's had a computer class. One. And they took me down to the basement. They were making the F4 mechanical computer, which looks like a transmission. And they said, well, your job is going to be convert that mechanical computer to an electronic computer.
Oh, great. One computer class.
Yeah. By the way, we don't have the contract yet. So you have 3 months to figure out what you need to know.
Wow.
Well, they had hired another person. See, I was just out of college. So they'd hired a guy around 40 who had designed computers, but he hated electronics.
Gotcha.
He didn't like electricity. He didn't see our prototype for a year and a half.
Wow.
So he did the big picture design and I did all the detail.
Very cool.
The technology was only a year and a half old. Intel had just started. So the chip company, after we did our design, they turned down our design about 3 times. And finally we agreed on a design. And then when it came time to make the chips, nobody wanted to make them. And
so Intel wound up making them themselves, right?
Well, the company I worked for, they were not a semiconductor company.
Gotcha.
But the semiconductor companies, they were busy making memory chips and calculators. So they didn't want to do a 1,000-run custom F14.
Right.
I mean, they didn't know it was F14.
Right.
So the owner of my company flew up to the company that I preferred to make them and bought out 51% of the company.
Yeah. So
now Garrett owned the semiconductor company.
There you go.
And so they made the chips, and then they still sold stock back to the owners. I'm kind of telling you the interesting parts. Then about 6 months before the box was to be delivered, the Navy requested the MTBF report. So mean time between failures.
Between failures, yeah.
Well, brand new technology, no history.
Yeah, none.
They were really pissed off, to be honest with you. They literally stopped the project, threatened to give it to the other company after a year and a half, which was Bendix. Bendix refused it. So they came back, and eventually they asked me, was it possible while the plane's flying that you can do diagnostics on all the chips? And if there's a single point failure, to switch it over to a second computer you guys are going to put in the box.
Of
so
course.
now it's a dual redundancy in-flight self-test computer. So we came up with a lot of patterns, and we were successful. About 99% of all the chips were tested in flight.
Nice.
And then we submitted the chips for manufacturing. It was a 3-month wait at that time. And we're just hoping they're going to work. We're just hoping. And
there weren't many fingernails left on the end of y'all's fingers, huh? They're pretty well chewed off.
Well, it was like if it didn't work, my career's gone. And if it did work, turned out nobody cared. They were just happy. Well, the first set of chips worked 100%. The design, the programming, there was like 68,000 binary ones and zeros to program by hand.
Wow.
And
wow.
It all worked. And
you're the guy that was the only computer class on the crew that got that started and made that happen. The only guy that had taken a computer class.
Yes.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I want to talk with you more, Ray. I want to talk
with you more. It was a math class. It wasn't even a computer class.
That's great. That's great. I remember back to the 8086 and 8088 chips were the first PCs. That's when I came on the scene back in the early 80s. So I appreciate all the hard work you put into it to make it happen. And thanks for that. That's pretty impressive, folks. If you don't understand the who you're sitting in the room with right now, go check him out, because this is the real deal. This is what started it all. So thank you, Ray. Thank you for your hard work, and thank you for sharing that story with us. But now we're going to shoot over to Lorenzo and chat with our Top Gun F14 podcaster. Come on, Lorenzo, talk to me, man.
Good evening.
Look, thanks for being here.
Well, before we do that, let me do an introduction. So you have to get to know Lorenzo. F14 podcast. Check him out on Instagram and YouTube. He is the reason that I added aviation to this amazing podcast. He is the reason I had LEEKSTER as my very first guest, and Rob Todd, and so many aviators and anyone related to aviation. So I'm forever grateful. It would have never happened if I would have never met him on Instagram. So definitely connect with him and get to know Lorenzo. There you go.
Awesome. And he has one of the best porn star mustaches I've ever seen in the year 2022. Sorry. That's just the interdepartmental rivalries. I'm a Marine. These guys are Navy. They're going to catch it from me. So
that's okay. We know who writes your paycheck at the end of the day.
So he knows all about plane porn, Robin.
And you could kick me off the boat anytime. You guys
don't sleep in the hallway.
Yeah. So anyway, thanks, Lorenzo, for coming. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
Look, you have aviation as a component of this podcast because of you. So tell us all about what you do and how you came to know this crazy lady, Cindy.
Yeah. She reached out to me a while ago, and she, again, like many other, the Tomcat is a family, and it fills people with desire and gives you the ability to chase your dreams, especially when you meet these people behind the airplane, guys like LEEKSTER you'll speak to shortly. And when they get ahead and they convey their stories to you, and you get an understanding of, to us, it's a piece of metal. When we look at it, it's a machine. They bring it to life.
Right.
And in doing that, I don't want to say it kind of captures your heart, steals your heart, but it's an amazing balance of man and machine together, honestly. And I got to witness it firsthand personally growing up as a child in front of Grumman-Cowerton, and I've lived here my whole life, and got to, experience coming from a Navy family as well, a strong naval background back to World War II. And I got involved with a congressman, and that gave me U.S. House of Representative ID, which got me into NAS Oceana. Which
ding.
14 Tomcat, but only this time you couldn't tell the kid to scram and get lost. And I met the most incredible people I've ever ran into in this country, and they were just warm people. They were anything but what you would think they are on the Discovery Channel, and incredible personalities behind them. The people back at Grumman, the families, incredible people, and to watch it all culminate and come off the runway and afterburner at Oceana was special. Knowing that, the plane being retired, it brought us to the point where, I wanted to see more representation in the community than what was available. And knowing them personally, knowing their stories, there was no other way to get it to the public than to get ahead and create the podcast and get LEEKSTER to get involved and host the shows. And he's had countless legends on we've gotten a chance to speak with. And from there, we have our Instagram page, kind of where it all started, I guess. And over 100,000 people supporting us now, reaching some 4.5 million people at any given time.
Awesome.
And again, this community deserves that. It's their platform. It's based on them. It's about them. And it's a way for them to reach out to our fellow Americans and share with them their leadership and their leadership skills, which is life altering.
Absolutely. 100%. And the way you put that and the way you present that there was no other place to do this, so it had to be done. That's kind of what I feel is a common thread that runs through this sort of F14 Tomcat family. It's like, well, if there isn't one, Ray, let's make one, right? There's no microprocessor that can do this. Hell, let's design that thing, man, right? And then here's Lorenzo, like, look, there's no podcast. Well, let's just make one. Of course we have to, right? There's no can't, right? And I think that's what I love about.
Absolutely. Guys like Ray Holt, no matter what the challenge was when it was handed to him, they were determined to get it done. And it became a matter of pride. And, his CADC chip, it's the heart of the airplane. But there's also like 9 other computers that tie into it. And, it's his work is that 36 years of naval aviation we all reflect back on and, appreciate so much. Sure. And again, the podcast, everything we've done, to do it properly in my book, it had to be done straight out of Calverton, straight out of the soil that brought this airplane to life. And that's our logo, straight out of Calverton.
That's great. That's so cool. Yeah, and I imagine there might be a couple of episodes with Ray on it that you've maybe spoken to him and we could go and hear more about him.
No, we haven't had a chance to get him on the show yet, but I think he knows right now that the G9 radar is pointed at him. And
we need that story, man. I want to hang out and talk to you, Ray, because I'm in computers. I've been in computers since they were cool. And
he needs a debrief. I mean, I had a Commodore 16. I had a Commodore 64. I had a Commodore 128. I had a modem in 1987.
Nerd breakdown, rolling through.
I'm still emailing the guy who did all the programming on the Commodore.
Wow.
Awesome.
Wow, there it is. You heard it here first, folks. It's the Commodore 64 stuff that went into the F14 Tomcat. There it is.
Anytime, baby.
All right. Man, I got to tell you, I'm kind of a little envious, Lorenzo, just because you get to do really cool stuff and you get to hang out with some really cool people. So thanks for coming on the show today and letting us be a part of it and finding out a little bit about your world, because it seems to be a pretty cool world to be in. So you got us the LEEKSTER on the show. I guess this month we're celebrating our year anniversary of adding aviation. So I'll tell you what, Rob, we got you here on the screen now. We're going to go ahead and jump over to you. Rob, your story as life as a green shirt, like that's such a big thing. You should see there's this look of awe that kind of comes over Cindy's face when she talks about it. And she's like, you have to tell them about the green shirt. You got to talk about the green shirt. So what is so special about the green shirt? And tell us all about what that means and what it meant to you.
Hey, Robin, thanks a lot for having me on.
Yes, sir.
I joined the Navy in 90 originally, and what I wanted to do, I was directed to do something else, and then I got in a little trouble, and I got sent to the flight deck of the USS America. And, they were telling me I had three different jobs to choose from. I could be in arresting gear, catapults, and there was a pry fly position open, which is a cushy job in the tower. And I said, I want the dirtiest, nastiest job on the flight deck. And that was a green shirt.
Okay. So what does that entail? We
basically keep all of the catapults running. Now, just saying that as a blanket statement, there's a lot that goes into that. We're man up, pre-op, every launch, that catapult has to be ready to go. Anytime maintenance is going, you do not sleep until that catapult is up and ready to shoot. And that never happened. We worked 24 hours a day, many times.
Right.
Having that dynamic of those catapults, especially the waste catapults, there always had to be a waste catapult ready for alert launch. Right. The bow was always used as a parking, right, basically. So the waste always had to be open and ready to shoot. So we had to have a 98% at least capability for that catapult to shoot.
No pressure
at all.
No pressure.
No pressure.
No pressure. You know what I see when I think of guys running the catapult, and I've never been there, never seen one launched from the deck, but I just have this feeling.
You're missing out.
I'm saying, right? I have this feeling or this image of guys just covered to their elbows in grease, just making that thing stay lubricated, just moving.
Well, it's not only grease, it's also hydraulic fluid, it's also lube oil, and that catapult steam heats up all those 3 different ingredients.
Ooh.
And it makes a nice little sludge on you, the flight deck, and everywhere else anywhere that catapult affects. And that catapult steam, it's like mixing gravy together when you get that hydraulic fluid and that lube oil going. Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was.
And jet exhaust. Don't forget about jet exhaust.
Oh, and the jet exhaust too. Just add that in. And if it's tuned perfectly, it smells bad, and they're never tuned perfectly, so you're eating raw.
I never minded the smell. I love the smell of JP5. I loved the smell of diesel smoke when I was younger too. So JP5.
I enjoyed JP5. I enjoyed the smell of JP, but when it's misfiring though, it can be pretty harsh, man.
Yeah.
When it's only burning half the fuel, you're sucking up the other half. So anyway, that's cool. So any kind of risky close calls or anything you want to share with us? Something cool about? I mean, something you
only about 1,000. Which one do you want?
The one where you saved the day. That's always where the girl the hero saves the day and the girl survives.
None of that happens in the catapult. I will tell you about one story, and LEEKSTER is fully aware of this. My first time that I was a topside PO, which I was directly underneath the aircraft as it went to full power, which was a pretty amazing thing. But before working up to that point, you had to go through several different watch stations. One of them was a wakeboard, and you had to go up and show the Rio the wakeboard. He would give you thumbs up, thumbs down, good, or it had to be perfect, and it had to be what the Rio had in the cockpit and what you had; those had to match. Right. And my first time getting to do that by myself, I got a little excited, and I was thrilled that I was up on the flight deck. Number one, it was so damn scary.
Right.
It was so damn loud. And my first one by myself was a night launch.
Of course.
Which a day launch is one thing. A night launch is 10 times worse than that, or better, however way you want to look at it. Yeah. And I went and showed the Tomcat Rio his wakeboard, and then for some reason, I just lost all common sense of where I was at. And I realized, oh my God, I need to get back, because Cat 4 had a Prowler coming in, an EA6B Prowler coming up. Right. I was like, oh my God. So I ran over there and got his weight real quick. It was wrong. And I started getting nervous, and I dialed it in. It was wrong like 3 or 4 times. And finally, the NFL gives me a thumbs up. I'm like, oh my God. Well, by the time I got back there, the catapult on Cat 3 had already moved his launch bar over on top of the shuttle and was into the throat, which means you are close to ready. You're close to launch. Yeah. So I'm like, well, I'm going to stop right here. Well, I was out of place, and one of the troubleshooters he's like, push me. He's like, get back. Well, where I went back into no man's land, right where the F14 takes tension. Those afterburners just become incredibly hot.
Oh yeah.
So I'm out of position, and by that time you can't move anywhere. You literally just pin yourself down. So I'm holding this wakeboard like this. I'm holding on to the pad eye as that Tomcat goes into tension, and he starts doing his control wipeout. So I'm left there by myself, and I'm behind the troubleshooter. And then I think he realizes the predicament. Well, as soon as the Tomcat goes into afterburner, Cat 4 goes into tension. So you have an EA6B that has a canted exhaust blowing rocks and everything else out of it. It just beat the absolute hell out of me. And then that Tomcat was frying me because the afterburners were so hot. So my goggles melted along my face. My cranial melted from the heat.
Wow.
And I'm sitting there, I'm holding on to the pad eye. And then the troubleshooter looks back at me and realizes I'm in the air. I mean, my legs are like this.
Wow.
Troubleshooter realizes what's going on. Then he suspends the launch, which makes it worse because the Tomcat stays there.
It has to shut down.
And stays in tension, full power until the launch bar comes out of the throat.
Oh.
And then after that, have to wait for the EA6B to power down. So I shut down. Hey, it almost killed me. 1.
Yeah.
Shut down 2 birds. 2. And then I had to go to the air boss and explain what happened, but the green shirt was
no.
melted to my skin.
Oh,
Then my cranial was melted. My goggles were melted. And I got to go out and talk to the air boss and tell him, explain why I was so dumb.
yeah.
And then went back to work.
And went back to work looking like the Phantom of the Opera with half your face melted off.
Yep. I got kicked off the
that's
flight deck for 7 days and had to requal, and then went right back to work.
Oh my gosh, that's intense. Wow. See, now that's what I'm talking about right there. Something no civilian
That's
could
just
ever.
one, Robin. That's
Yeah, but no civilian could ever even imagine that. And there's no way you did it any justice. The amount of heat that was coming off of there. It was how your goggles melted. Yeah. No,
Yeah, you can't imagine.
bull. It was dry. I had 3rd-degree burns, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it was bad, man.
Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah. So, well, I'm glad you survived, brother. That's tough. But then you held down the fort and never did that again, did you?
No, I actually
Don't
went
make
through
that
the
mistake
station
again.
pretty quick. Yeah, you learn. And LEEKSTER will tell you several times a Tomcat has almost killed everybody who it's had something to do with.
I think we're about to hear some of those stories right now.
I guarantee you will. And those
tell me
that
how you
gives
met
you immense respect for that aircraft.
No doubt. All right. Well, if we get back over, we have some more questions for Ron, but I'm going to go to LEEKSTER now. So, Rob, thanks a lot, man. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Well, let's talk the story first. How did these amazing gentlemen meet?
Oh, here we go. Ron, Rob, you going to tell a story about how you met LEEKSTER?
Sure. Just the whole thing with officers and enlisted were a little bit different when I was in. This was back in what Lorenzo calls the golden era of naval aviation. Well, there was a separation there. And I worked with a lot of guys who, we weren't prohibited from talking to officers, but there was supposed to be a relationship. There was supposed to be a professional line there that you didn't cross. And I met LEEKSTER in the gym on the USS America, and I was very nervous because I knew that he was an officer. And then I figured out that he was a Tomcat pilot, which was even harder to swallow. And then somehow I stumbled the words out to ask him to take my camera up. And he was like, yeah, man, no problem. And I literally couldn't talk at this time. I couldn't really walk at this point because it was such a dramatic impact to me. At this time in the Navy, I was a little disenchanted with the military because I had a lot of negative attitudes. What we did on deck was a very hard, difficult job.
Yeah.
But I don't care what you do in life. It's what you make it. You can make it good or you can make it bad.
Sure.
And a lot of the guys I worked with had negative attitudes. I never had that. And meeting up with LEEKSTER and then having him take my camera up was like an epiphany of this is how the military is supposed to be. Right. And when he came back, now we had those old cameras. You couldn't see what he had taken. I didn't get to see those pictures until 6 months later.
Wow.
But the impact that he had on me basically changed my whole entire naval career around and started gearing me towards it geared me towards doing many other different things from that point forward. But his generosity and how I was treated was a turning point in what I felt about the Navy.
Awesome. Yeah, the little story I told you before we came on the air, it's maybe if I'd had a LEEKSTER, I'd still be in.
Well, it's those guys that we need that we don't have now. It's guys like him that make a difference.
Right. That bring humanity to it, right?
Exactly. That they serve with, paying it forward.
Well, that's awesome. And how great to hear about such a generous thing on Giving Tuesday and, a month where we celebrate generosity. So thanks for that, Rob. I really appreciate that story. That's good stuff.
Absolutely.
And I'll tell you, now the man, the myth, and the legend, I haven't got to speak to you face to face or meet up with you yet, LEEKSTER, but I'll tell you, I hear your name screamed constantly when I'm working with Cindy. So I'm so excited to finally get to meet you. Thank you for coming on the show today, LEEKSTER. First question, just right out the bat, what inspired you to be a Navy pilot?
Just like a lot of folks, I kind of grew up around aviation but watching all the old movies like Flying Tigers with John Wayne and Baba Black Sheep. And I kind of grew up during the space era with, the early Apollo program, that kind of stuff. And in those days, those guys were just, mythical human beings.
Right.
And I actually never even considered, I always wanted to be a fighter pilot, but I thought, that it was a very small chance that I would get the opportunity to do something like that. And when I got when I got in college, of course, I started applying, and I kept getting turned down. And I just kept persevering. I learned how to fly little airplanes, Cessnas, and got my pilot's license, and just had a love affair with aviation all around,
right.
And just kept plugging away. And then finally one day I got a phone call, and they offered me a job as a Navy pilot through an enlisted commissioning program. So I was one of the rare guys who went to flight school without a bachelor's degree. And it was kind of strange, you're in learning how to fly Navy aircraft with guys that have engineering degrees from the Naval Academy or MIT or whatever. So, and I was just a podunk guy with a very general education. So, anyways, it went well, and I ended up lucky enough to fly the F14. So.
That's awesome. And you mentioned the ECP. That's funny because my youngest son is 19. He's in his freshman year at college, and he just came home last weekend for Thanksgiving. He says, yeah, I went and interviewed with the Marine Corps to do this ECP thing that they have where I go spend the summers between now and graduation, going to Quantico and working with the Marines. I said, so you'll be in there with a bunch of guys that are all, engineers already and stuff from these high-tech schools, and you'll just be Joe Podunk,
Yeah, but they're, they're just regular people too,
Yeah.
and they're just as flawed as anybody, whether they admit it or not. And, my dad was enlisted in the Air Force. He was a mechanic, and taught me how to work on engines when I was a kid. And it was surprising to me that sometimes you show up in a place like flight school, and there's guys with these fancy degrees, and they've never actually worked on any machinery before. So there was an advantage there of understanding, how machines actually work from a hands-on standpoint. And I actually worked on airplanes all through college too. I was a fueler, and then I was working on a ramp, parking airplanes and helping do lower level maintenance on these airplanes. So being around airplanes all the time, a lot of folks that I went through flight school with had never even been close to an airplane like that before. So that was an advantage as well. That helps.
That's why it worked out so well for you. And my kid will tell me that as well. He's like, Dad, when you taught me how to do such and such, half the kids in this school couldn't even do that if they tried. Probably their dads probably couldn't either, right? So anyway, so tell us one of the most amazing stories, right? I'm kind of going by what Cindy's wanting me to ask you guys, right? So I'm kind of stuck because here she's like, hey, Rob, tell us a great story. And Rob's like, well, I got like 12,000 of them, man.
Right. Yeah,
so
Rob mentioned that
you ride
the
on
F14.
the white horse, right? And the girl lives, and you ride into the sunset. Like, that's the one we want to hear, right? LEEKSTER. What's one of your favorite?
Oh, there's so many, and as Rob mentioned,
wild.
As you mentioned, there's so many times that the F-14, in those days, it was very dangerous. I'm not saying that it's not dangerous to fly off aircraft carriers now, but the accident rate at that time for the F-14 was around 6.5 per 100,000 hours. And I think the current accident rate for fighter planes in the military is around 1.5. So if you can imagine that it was, 5 to 7 times more dangerous. We lost a lot of folks. We crashed a lot of airplanes. We were learning a lot of things the hard way. And during World War II, of course, they were crashing at a rate probably 10 times what we were. So it's an evolutionary process. So you couldn't go through a career in the airplane where you didn't have any close calls. And that didn't even include combat. And frankly, our combat missions, I ended up doing 3 combat deployments, Desert Storm, and 2 over to Bosnia during the Yugoslavian Civil War, and then over to Somalia as well. And so we saw a lot of stuff, we saw a lot of combat, if you will. But no airplane in our air wing ever had even a single bullet hole in it. But we still ended up losing, I think, 8 aircraft and 5 aircrew within about 2.5 years. So almost daily you would have near misses with a midair I had more than one at night. A guy almost ran me over at night, not on purpose, of course. He just didn't see me because I didn't know that my tail light was out. And he passed so close to my canopy that I could hear his jet engine as he missed my aircraft by about 10 feet. When, Rob was on the catapult, for some reason they got the weight wrong, and the weight performance is very important on a catapult launch. And when they launched me off the catapult, the airplane didn't have enough oomph. It was a very slow roll down towards the end of the ship, and you're thinking, wow, we're not going to fly. So now your decision comes to, am I going to eject, or am I going to try and stay with it and save the airplane? And then in the F14, the Rio's responsibility was to eject us in that situation. And I thought we were going to die. I just put full power on the airplane and tried to fly it the best I could. It fell off the side, went down over the water about 10 feet, and the afterburners dug in, and we were in ground effect, and the airplane ended up flying away.
Wow.
But I was 100% certain in my mind that we were not going to make it.
Right.
But when we landed, I asked my Rio, why didn't you get us out of this airplane? And he said, well, I thought we were going to make it. So there's no argument there, because we did make it, And so you have those. One time I was on the tanker at night, tanking off an A6, and my wingman had lost sight of us, and the tanker I'm plugged into the hose behind him in an air-to-air refueling situation. And this A6 just makes this radical nose-down maneuver where I almost crashed into the bottom of him. And as that happens, and I'm puzzling in my mind, why is this happening? Because it was so, to have this guy just suddenly stuff his nose down into me, and I'm doing the same thing. We're 0G out of the straps in the dark, and then another aircraft goes 10 feet over the top of us at 500 miles an hour.
Wow.
So, yeah, and you hear it, see it, and it's over as quickly as you think. There's no time to even be scared, because it just happens so quickly. So, loads of stories like that. And that's what Lorenzo has brought to the table with this F14 podcast. We've had, quite a few amazing people on there. The last show, we had a good friend of mine come on and talk about how a Navy F14 had accidentally, almost on purpose, shot down an Air Force F4 in the Mediterranean Sea. So kind of an embarrassing situation. We call that a blue on blue engagement. So, stories like that. And while I was in the F14, those kind of events are happening all over the world, because there were 17 squadrons and I think 12 aircraft carriers at that time. So, you would wake up one morning and a guy had a ramp strike, hit the back of the ship off the coast of Japan in heavy seas, or we lost one off of Oceania because of an engine failure, and they spun it in and the guys got out. Oh, who was it? So it was a constant series of events that were going on during that time. Right. And when Don was, I love, that you have this guy, Don, come on, because I don't think what people don't appreciate is what the F-14 was for its time period. There's a lot of mystery around the airplane, and I hear a lot of people make comments about the F-14 where it's clear that they don't understand much about what the airplane actually was. Right. And frankly, it fits into that Cold War Apollo moon landing story kind of space in American history. They built an airplane that was desperately needed at the time, because we had shown that our Century Series fighters, the F-4, the F-100s, the F-105s that were in Vietnam, were lacking in maneuvering performance, and the air-to-air missiles were sorely disappointing in how they performed in air-to-air engagements. And there was no machine gun in most of these airplanes. So when the military came to these contractors and asked for a machine that could do everything, we want to do everything. We want to shoot people down from 100 miles away. We want to be able to land on a carrier at 120 miles an hour. We want to be able to go from 120 miles an hour to Mach 2. We want to have a machine gun. We want to be able to stay in there. Right. They want to do everything, you know, so make it land on the moon.
And can you do it for about 10 grand a piece, right?
Right. And guys like there's people that stepped up to the plate and created this machine that was ridiculously ahead of its time.
Right.
And it was quite a bit of analog in the airplane, and then they mixed in this digital portion with the weapon system and the CADC that made it able to fire these missiles and shoot at these supposed Russian threat bombers from 100 miles away. And I'll be honest with you, as an operator, when I got in the airplane, when I was trained to fly it, I was floored at how sophisticated it was, in a sense that it was extremely complicated. And they had put so much in this thing that you almost, when it actually all worked, it was kind of surprising. It was this Rube Goldberg mousetrap, everything does everything, and it worked, and it worked all the time, and it blew your mind when you would take a Phoenix shot at a target that was 50 or 60 miles away, and the missile would guide and kill that target. It was just amazing. Right. And so I was floored by. Now later, when they put in digital upgrades and they significantly upgraded the airplane in the 90s to where it could deliver smart weapons, precision guided weapons, and they gave it new big engines, and then they put in this digital flight control system. It became an even more advanced fighter, and to the day they parked them, they were legitimately lethal machines. I think it was a great airplane.
Nice. Yeah, I can't tell from your passion for it that you liked it very much at all.
Well, I often have mentioned that I had imposter syndrome, and I can tell you that when you walk out to a machine like that and somebody gives you the keys, right? You show up one day and someone goes, "Hey, you're the guy who's going to fly this thing." Right. And then you step out to something that is that magnificent that you've dreamed of your whole life, and you get in it. It blows you. It's self-actualization realized. I mean, to be able to participate in something like that. So I was
an F14 pilot.
So what?
Kind of like meeting an F14 pilot.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's what I'm thinking.
and the carrier is another example of that. It's often misunderstood as well. You take these young Americans. The average age on these carrier decks is around 19. You train them up to do this incredibly dangerous job. You send them halfway around the world to do it, and they cycle out the crew. About 50% of the crew cycles out every 18 months. So normally they're on a 3-year set of orders. Right. So you take somebody in a very short period of time, you train them to do something that is incredibly dangerous, and then you cut them loose and let them do their job. And about the time they get really good at it, you take them away and train them to do something else. And that's the military, right?
Hurry up and wait. Yes, sir. Wow, that's great. Great. Hey, Cindy popped up her little note there. She wanted to ask before we get wrapped up here, what's your favorite aviation movie or series? Besides Top Gun, American Made, Midway, Final Countdown, and Devotion included now.
I think that the greatest movie that's ever been made about naval aviation is called The Bridges at Toko-Ri. That's right. And there's a quote in there where they're taking off from the carrier, and the carrier air wing commander looks out on the flight deck, and this is after they've had a bunch of guys lose their lives in combat, et cetera. And he says, "Where do we get such men? People that volunteer to do this." Is just amazing. But yeah, Grace Kelly, Robert Mitchum, not to be missed. Fantastic color film about the Korean War. Highly recommend it.
I always love 12 O'Clock High too, Leekster.
Yeah, that's a good one about leadership.
Mm-hmm. Yes. 12 O'Clock High. All right, good. I'm writing these down, man. So any museums you like or any books on aviation that really inspire you, Leekster?
Well, certainly the Naval Aviation Museum in Pensacola is, it's, in my opinion, better than the Smithsonian. It is, and don't get me wrong, I love the Smithsonian, and I love the Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio, also incredible. But the neat thing about the Naval Aviation Museum in Pensacola is that it's on a functioning naval base, so you get to see Navy airplanes flying by. In fact, the Blue Angels will practice quite often, and you could catch a Blue Angels doing their show while you are there at the museum.
Very cool.
And the last time I was there, I took my son, and it was just the two of us standing there watching basically a private air show of the Blue Angels.
Nice.
But the airplanes in the museum are just lovingly restored, perfectly restored. And there's no ropes around them. There's nothing to stop you from walking up and actually physically touching most of these airplanes. Not that they want you to touch them, but a lot of, stuff in the Smithsonian is kind of in a display and it's away from you. Whereas in Pensacola, you can really get up and close to these machines and you kind of feel its spirit, if you will. Very cool stuff.
Right. She asking the same of you other guys about your favorite museums that you want. While you're thinking about that for a second, we have a little airport out by me, and I went live with Cindy last year one time while I was out there, and there's an F14. It's stripped out, it's just a shell in our Touch a Plane area at our aviation museum there. And I walked around that thing while I was on a FaceTime with Cindy. I thought she was going to lose her mind, guys. It was unbelievable. I'm walking like right up underneath. So I get what you mean when you say getting to walk up that close to them, like sticking your head up into, the strut compartment so you can actually feel like this is incredible. It's an incredible piece of equipment. So it is. That Pensacola, you can do that. I was thinking about, well, I'm not going to fill in any more of mine, but let's go with you, Ray. What's your favorite museum, aviation or otherwise?
Well, I actually have two. The very first time I got to touch an F-14, because, I'm not on the deck, I'm not flying them, was in Denver at the Air and Space Museum.
Nice.
Oh, that is a good one.
It was great. They let me sit in it. They let me speak to the crowd. And I said, do you have a CADC? He goes, no, I think they're all stripped out. And we look, and it looks like it wasn't. So he said, when you leave, I'm going to check. But he never got back to me, so I don't know if it was or not.
That's funny you mentioned that. When I went through the RAG there at Oceana, when I went through the F-14 training squadron, I believe the F-14 was the first airplane I'd ever flown with a CADC in it. And actually every airplane I've flown subsequently has had a CADC in it. And it was so mind-blowing for me for them to explain what this, air data computer was. And here we are all these years later that I actually get to meet the guy that that is amazing to me. I'm very, very impressed and appreciative of that. Very cool.
You're going to be interviewing him soon. Don't worry.
Yeah.
All right. You guys want to hear mine?
Soon, LEEKSTER.
It's been 52 years since we started the design.
Wow.
1968.
Amazing.
So the other museum is Pensacola. I've been there about 3 times. I'm about 4 hours away from it. I've taken youth groups down there. They have 2 F-14s. The one out front, they say, is number 5. And I personally tested the first 10 CADCs. So I'm just imagining it's still in there, but I know it's not.
Right. Hey, can I real quick for prosperity? Can I get y'all to just like straighten your eyebrows for a second, look at the camera, and smile so we can do a picture? Because I know this will make Cindy incredibly happy. So I'm gonna do countdown 1, 2, 3. You ready? 1, 2, 3. Smile. All right. Wait, no, it didn't work. Hang on. I clicked the wrong spot. I'm trying to look at the screen and click another. Ready? Here we go. Smile wave, guys. Damn it! What the hell's going on? Oh, you know what? I am clicking the wrong button. Try one more time. There it is. 1, 2, 3. There we go. All right, I got that. So,
all right. Yeah, so let me do
Rob?
my opening here, Robin. So here in Southern California, the Museum of Flight, there is an F-14 there, right there in Torrance, which LEEKSTER is up here for another, 10 or 11 months. So we could probably meet him out there. The Lion Air Museum, amazing, right at the Santa Ana Airport. Of course, the Midway in San Diego, and Plains of Fame here in Southern California. That is my list.
Awesome.
Oh, we can't forget the most amazing place on the planet And that is in Wisconsin, the air show. We have over 800 airplanes every year. So definitely, if you want to check that out, either next year or in 2024, we're going to be doing a trip down there to Wisconsin. Anybody have anything to say about that air show?
Best air show in the world. They've got everything. I've been there several times and I just love it. Yeah,
and
super
Reno.
Cool and beautiful. I mean, it's the folks that are there. It's kind of a pilot's air show, if you will. You know, there's so many people there that love airplanes. So, yeah, it's a big nerd love fest for airplanes, definitely, and worth going to.
Very cool. Very cool.
You know, I just got to throw in there real quick just to say my favorite movie. I got to point to that orange Grumman test pilot suit, and I got to point to Ray when he was a strapping young lad. And I got to tell everybody, you want to watch the Grumman flight test reports for the F14 1 through 7, and it's actually filmed by Grumman, and it's some of the most historical stuff, which leads to guys like LEEKSTER and their career and Rob shooting these airplanes. Yeah. Absolutely incredible. And my museum choice would be Naval Air Station, Wildwood, New Jersey. Their G-powered Grumman F14B Jolly Roger Tomcat it's beyond beautiful, and the staff, Austin, Doc, Bruce, Joni, incredible people. Incredible experience, like many other museums, which, you know, LEEKSTER mentioned Pensacola. AJ204 down there is just beautiful. The airplanes, you know, when they're inside, they're gorgeous.
Nice. Nice. Rob, what about you? We didn't get from you, buddy.
When I went through aircrew school in Pensacola and I went through the Pensacola Museum, I was blown away by that because I've always been a huge fan of war and naval aviation and everything else. And then just like Ray, I went through the one in the Rockies about 4 hours from me in Denver. And that's a really nice museum. And that Tomcat is just
checkmate.
And there's another one that I went to in Wisconsin, or not Wisconsin. It's in Michigan. It's in near Battle Creek, Michigan. And it's got an SR-71 and a Jolly Rogers Tomcat in it. Both of it. That's an amazing museum too.
Kalamazoo Air Zoo.
Yes, Kalamazoo Air Zoo.
Nice. I love that you know that. That's beautiful.
Dale delivered the airplane actually. With John,
I just pulled up the Grumman thing, so I'm interested in that. I'm going to go look at those videos of.
Yeah, Snort flew that jet in.
Very cool. Very cool.
Amazing because we look back at the history and like LEEKSTER explained how the plane in its last days went full digital, all glass cockpit, giving lifetime intelligence off the TARP pod with rover and yet you watch that video 1970 to 71 when it was first putting air under its wings for the first time.
Right.
Incredible workmanship of those people of that generation that gave us. It wasn't normal for a fighter to stick around for 36 years as the front edge of the sword, you know, the point. And again, they got it done, and it wasn't just the airplane; it was the legends behind it, the ones who spun the wrenches, the pilots, the guys on the ships, the guys
ran those shuttles. My God, dude, that's I think my hero today is Rob. Y'all are great. You know, you can sit behind the cockpit, but dude, the guy that gets you off that piece of steel and up in the air, that's that's intense. That's intense. So, all right. So,
I'd like to say one thing, maybe in closing here.
Yeah.
The microprocessor in the CADC was the world's first microprocessor. So it was 2 years before Intel. So for 10 years, I've been trying to get a hold of a F-14 CADC. And, you know, it's impossible. I've written to Congress, senators, they all say, forget it. By act of Congress, they have to be all shredded, destroyed. So right now,
you sneak into a museum and snag one.
Do you think that's because of the alien technology? Oh wait, I'm not supposed to talk about that.
Whoa!
Were you on a Janet flight making that chip?
Well, it's because of Iran, I think.
It's the only thing that'll still work when the aliens come to take over.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
Well, I told you earlier the first chips worked, so I was able to save them. So I personally have the first microprocessor.
Get out of here!
Wow. Oh, that is amazing!
Get out of here!
Nice.
Wow!
Congratulations!
I think the only other ones out there is Iran. So
wow.
If anybody knows how we can get a hold of one, we need to preserve at least one.
We'll do a stealth mission into Iran and grab one of those for you, Ray.
There it is.
Telling people that.
If we get
man for the jar too.
We get an air show Tomcat. We might need 2.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Shout outs. Anybody want to give any shout outs today before we get out of here, guys?
I'll start.
Cindy's going
to start. I want
to
to shout out to each and every one of you on this podcast today. I'll try not to cry, but
it's coming.
Oh my God. This is amazing. A year later, and if it wasn't for Instagram, meeting Lorenzo, connecting me to LEEKSTER, and then also Taco, he connected me to David Bronick. And that's actually how I heard all about the accidental engineers, because of David Bronick. And of course, Rob Todd. And lastly, Robin Stern. Thank you so much for having my back, brother. Appreciate you so much. Love all of you guys. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Anybody else got some shout outs they want to do before we get out of here, guys?
Sure. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Rob. Really appreciate it. Rob, Todd, LEEKSTER, you guys rock. You can catch their shows on just pretty much any podcast platform. You have the official F14 Tomcat radio show with LEEKSTER and Siphon, and also Tomcat University, which features Virus, Scott Bonasowitz, and Rob Todd. Just absolutely amazing veterans, amazing shows. You find us on Instagram at F14 Tomcat Radio Show, just basically F14 Tomcat on Instagram. And amazing. It's absolutely awesome to be a guest here today, and we thank you guys very much.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Lorenzo. You made this show what it was. We had to have all the different perspectives, and so you bring part of it.
Starts with guys like Ray Holt.
That's exactly right, and every one of you who all had your part in making it happen. So. All right. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and jump out of here unless anybody else has a shout out.
2 more shout outs. Yeah. Rob and LEEKSTER. Who would you like to shout out today?
LEEKSTER, go ahead.
Oh, I just want to thank Rob and Lorenzo for preserving this history. Guys like Ray out there, what they did in that time period. I just have to reiterate, that this was Apollo. To me, it's like going to the moon. They took they built this airplane in what nowadays would be an impossible short period of time. It may have seemed like a long time at that time, but nowadays it takes forever to get an airplane like the F-35 out there and ready to fight in combat. And they took this airplane and had it. They had this groundbreaking, absolutely advanced technology, and they put it together, stuck it in an airplane, and had it out there ready to fight the Cold War for us in a very short period of time. And it worked great for 30, 35, 45 years. I don't know, Lorenzo, how many years exactly?
Well, technically, we're still going to 51 years right now.
Yeah, with the Iranian airplanes out there. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, just want to throw out there, the original draftsmen and engineers at Grumman, they were designing the LEM. They were designing spaceships. They were way beyond the technology of when you talked, we were playing with an F4 fan, it was like, ha. Once that stuff was all generated and built and in motion, Grumman turned around and took these same engineers and draftsmen and turned and created the Grumman F14 Tomcat, Design 303. And they nailed it in 36 years of excellent on the first try. There's no adjustments to this airplane aesthetically. Internally, components, yes, but the aerodynamic design of the airplane was achieved on day one.
Right.
Amazing.
Good stuff.
All the engineers I worked with, I was just out of college and they've been working for 10 or 20 years. They all came from the space program.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. Absolutely.
There you have it.
Think about that, LEEKSTER. The people who made your airplane were designing space.
Aliens, brother. I'm telling you.
You're saying Razor Gray?
Yeah. I felt sorry for those Russian bombers when I pulled up next to them up in the Arctic Circle. Those guys' eyes were awfully big when they saw an F-14 parked next to them.
Wow.
Couldn't even imagine. Top Gun quality stuff right there, huh? Just, what do you see? Diplomatic relations when he flipped him the bird?
That's right. Well, they were showing us Playboy centerfolds, and we were smiling and showing them signs in Russian that said funny things. So
nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. These are the guys that are defending our country, folks. Right there. So, Rob, it's your turn, brother. Shout it out, man.
Oh, it's hard to follow that great man, but Robin and Cindy, thank you so much for having us on here. Ray, you started this whole entire thing, which ties us all together.
Yeah.
I got to serve on the America. 28 years separated between LEEKSTER and I even talking to one another. And because I wrote a Facebook post, Taco knew him because him and they flew at American together. And then that tied, he's like, I know him. I'm going to get a hold of him. LEEKSTER calls me from 28 years prior, puts me on his show. So I meet Lorenzo, and then all that, I've met Cindy, and now I met you, Robin. So it's kind of a full circle thing.
That's great.
So it's awesome being here with all you guys. And I love keeping the tradition of this aircraft alive. But Ray, it started with you.
There you go. All started with you, Ray. So I'm just going to shout out to Cindy and say, thanks for allowing me the opportunity to meet all these incredible people. I'm humbled, and the fact that I've been trying to hold down the fort that you have built over the last year is not in the least intimidating at all. No, I promise it's not. I'm lying. So thank you for giving me the chance to stretch it and push it. And you're one of the people that made me want to actually start a podcast. And I have like 3 of them now. So when I watched you operate StreamYard and you were going about 1 million miles an hour with your hair on fire, you looked like an F14 Tomcat pilot trying to get all the sizing of everything right and making it just perfect. So thank you for allowing me to humbly try and fill in for you, but the opportunity to meet all these other amazing people that you're connected to as well. And Ray, I'm reaching out to you, I promise, because I want to hang out and have a beer and talk to you for a little while, man. I imagine you got some great stories. So
yeah, and I'll connect you to everybody, so you'll have phone numbers. You guys can schedule a meeting. And I was telling Lorenzo, 2024, we should all get together and celebrate the Tomcat, and especially because Rob has a project he's working on. And we're going to be doing a separate podcast probably in January or February, because Rob will have all those details probably by then. And then we're going to be doing a GoFundMe page that I'm helping him with. So a lot of great things moving forward here in the next couple of years, for sure.
There it is, people. All right. Well, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap this thing up. I know everybody would love to hang out. We went only about, an hour and 10 minutes. But anyway, we're doing great. Thank you all for coming, gentlemen. You have an amazing rest of your day. I'm looking forward to hanging out with you all in the future. We're going to go ahead and send you back over to the green room. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. All right. All right.
Thanks, Robin.
Yes, sir. All right, folks, that's our show today. Look, I got a couple more things before we finish up. I just want to say thank you to everyone who came by and watched today. We're continuing the history and the memory and honoring the guys that did all this. And it's just amazing that people come and watch and enjoy and continue that memory and that history. So keep it up, and thank you for coming. Make sure you subscribe to the Bucket List Coach Web Show live on YouTube to get your free ebook on how to create your bucket list. And tomorrow, back to regular programming, 9:30 a.m. with Jeff, pilot of the Yak 110. And as Cindy always says at Huntington Beach Air Show, Yak 1109 coming hot. All right, 1 o'clock Pacific. We're also going to be with retired Petty Officer Javier Medina. Have some amazing Navy stories right here. All right, folks, that's our show for this afternoon. Appreciate you all. Love you guys. Go out there, change the world, and have a great rest of your day. My name's Robin Stern, and I'm out of here.